Hello, I'm David Hughes. Welcome to Your Perfect Body, the podcast of the Esoteric Teaching community. Today's selection is an essay entitled Vedic History, Part 2, The Vedic Empire. Last time we discussed the Vedic history of material creation. Now, fast forward to the end of the previous Yuga, a little over 5,000 years ago. The Vedic Empire controlled the entire Earth planet. The planet was then known as Bharatvarsha, and its capital was the great city Hastinapur on the Jamuna River near the site of present-day Delhi. The Vedas clearly describe that the areas now known as China and the Orient, Russia, the Middle East, Africa, North and South America, and even Europe were part of that far-flung empire. At that time, the Vedas were the standard system of knowledge for the entire planet, and Sanskrit was the universal language of all learned people. The Vedic Empire was not exactly a dictatorship, but a federation of local rulers under one emperor who held court at Hastinapur. Vedic culture is very open and tolerant of local religion, social customs, and language. It was simply recognized by all intelligent people that a world government based on esoteric spiritual principles is the best arrangement for the peace and prosperity of the world's citizens. Government administrators had to be qualified as great warriors to defend the people against criminally inclined people. But they also had to be qualified in realization of the esoteric teaching and approved by the Vedic masters. The Vedic Empire was prosperous and opulent, with worldwide trade and decentralized light industry based on the natural production of minerals, food, and other commodities. Poverty, homelessness, and ignorance were unknown. Complete education according to one's tastes and abilities was available to everyone under government subsidy, and even the most humble household had fine clothing, jeweled decorations, and dishes and other utensils of pure gold. Only yogis and others who practiced renunciation of material enjoyment and a simple life of spiritual realization in the forest were without such opulence. The Vedic civilization was very sophisticated. It is not that advancement of scientific thought and powerful technology are recent developments. The Vedic culture had extensive spiritual knowledge, vast environmental and natural resources, a high degree of ethics and development of the arts. It also had space travel, communications at a distance, powerful smart weapons, intelligent biocomputers, and other high technology systems. However, Vedic technology differs from current technology in that Vedic technology is based on spiritual power, not material arrangements. The Vedic technology was a gift from the demigods of the heavenly planets to the citizens of the Earth planet during their rule. It was a mystic technology operated by special mantras taught to people according to their degree of spiritual attainment. The higher degree of spiritual realization one possessed, the more powerful the mantras they were allowed to use. Since the Vedic technology operated according to the subtle material mystic power of the demigods, people in general were not encouraged to seek mystic powers for themselves, but to concentrate on developing purity of heart and genuine spiritual realization. Vedic warriors and kings were highly spiritually qualified and ruled with the benefit of the citizens foremost in mind. The Vedic Empire was the most powerful warrior because, being the most spiritually advanced king, he had access to the most powerful mystic weapons. The subtle Vedic weapons technology is described in the Dhanur Veda, Mahabharata, and other Vedic works, allowed a single adept to defeat thousands of ordinary fighters. It also helped the Vedic Empire maintain order and control over the remote areas of the world from their court in Hastinapur. The entire Vedic civilization was based on spiritual realization, self-realization, or realization of the esoteric teaching. No one could attain a high position in Vedic society without the appropriate spiritual qualifications, even if they possessed the requisite material abilities. Thus, purity of heart and high spiritual character were valued over all other personal characteristics in Vedic society. Spiritual training began at an early age, and vocational education was based on astrological analysis and thorough testing of the student's aptitude for a particular type of work. Thus, a person's designation in Vedic society was not based on birth or economic status, but on a detailed and fair assessment of their character, interests, and abilities. The government maintained temples in every neighborhood where the local people could worship God according to their particular customs and beliefs. No one was forced to adopt a particular religion, but all were expected to make steady progress in spiritual realization under the guidance of a qualified spiritual master teacher. There was little crime, since departure from the principles of truthfulness and nonviolence was considered most shameful and could result in social ostracism. When necessary, justice and punishment were handled by local administrators under the guidance of spiritual authorities, taking into account the character and spiritual history of the accused, and was fair and swift. If the Vedic Empire was so great, then why did it collapse? To answer that question, let's go back again to the beginning of time. In the beginning of the universe, Lord Brahma created a race of godly beings called Prajapatis or progenitors, who further created many generations of progeny of various species to populate the universe. Most of the children of the Prajapatis were godly and followed the path of the esoteric teaching, but some were demoniac and refused to accept the principles of spiritual life or the supremacy of Lord Vishnu. As a result, the demigods were given the heavenly planets as a residence and the earthly planets to rule, but the demonic races were given dominion over the hellish planets. The demons were deeply resentful of this, as, being full of pride and lust, they desired the opulent planets and other property of the demigods for themselves. Therefore, the demons declared war on the demigods, and the ancient history of the universe is full of hair-raising descriptions of combat between the demigods and demons, some of whom had highly developed mystic powers. The earthly planets, being situated in between the heavenly and hellish worlds, were often the site and the prize of these battles. Many wars have been fought between the demigods and demons in the history of the universe. Many times our Earth planet has fallen into the hands of the demons, who stopped all religious rites and spiritual practices and plundered its rich resources for themselves without regard for the well-being of the inhabitants, us. Does this sound familiar? It is exactly what's going on today. Now, let's fast forward to the end of the previous Yuga. Seeing that the beginning of Kali Yuga was approaching, the demons saw an opportunity to capture the Earth planet from the demigods. So they gradually and stealthily infiltrated the royal families of the Vedic Empire. Taking birth as princes and princesses of the kings of the earth, they gradually usurped power and began to covertly develop great armies, preparing a revolt against the central government of Hastinapur. Finally, the demons infiltrated the family of the emperor himself by becoming the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra, a king who was disqualified from becoming the emperor because he was blind from birth. Dhritarashtra, who was also spiritually blind, allowed his disappointment and envy to overcome his good intelligence, enabling the demons to take birth in the womb of his wife Gandhari. His demonic offspring, led by the evil Duryodhan, cheated King Yudhishthir, the rightful emperor, of his throne, and illegally assumed control of the Vedic Empire.